Ugh.
Ugh.
Welcome back to the Always Right podcast. I'm author Carissa DeLay.
I'm Beard Hair Picker. Jamie Vendera.
Yes. Oh, it almost sounded like it rhymed for a second.
Yes, just because of the way I'm talking, because I'm close to Kentucky. So,
Oh my gosh, you're funny.
okay,
Today
my
we're
head's back.
What is it?
My head's back. It was out of frame.
Oh, yes, you were in
What a
frame now.
morning, though.
Yeah.
Carissa, where's the notes? You know me, Jamie. They're always there. I don't know why my iPhone didn't pick it up, so here I am writing notes for today's episode, which is a very special episode because it's something new.
We're starting a new series within the podcast episodes. We're going to start a series where we kind of go back in the past and tell you about some of the authors. This is going to be a series called Echoes of Authors Past. And I kind of like the idea. It's almost like what is it, Christmas Story with Charles Dickens, where It's like the ghosts from Christmas past. Yeah, that kind of thing. Today, this one is for Diane.
Yep.
So hopefully she listens. If you're listening, Diane, I'm so sorry.
Carissa chose this for you.
I did choose it for her, but I am sorry you have to put up with your husband sometimes because he was tasked with asking you for your copy of the book.
Yeah, Little Women. I just totally forgot. And her library is extensive, so there's no way in the world I could find it. I looked and looked, and I gave up.
So when you hear this, Diane, just take the book and hit him on the head. But with that said, we're going to talk about author Louisa May Alcott. She is the author of Little Women. So she was born November 29th, 1832 in Germantown, Pennsylvania, to Abigail May and Amos Bronson Alcott. Man, back in the day, because being a female author, we talked about this when we went over some of our authors from notably in history that we were talking about female authors. It would have been really hard back then.
Yeah, but she was a very strong persona. I'm sure we'll get into that, like how she signed up. She was one of the first females where she lived to sign up to vote when that became, available to women. She never married because she focused on books, very into social work. So very strong woman. But I'm still amazed because she wrote over 30 books and a bunch of other short stories.
Wait a minute. You said she signed up to vote. I didn't catch that one because
I got it in my notes.
She died in 1888.
I'm telling you, I'll find it here in a little bit.
I didn't read that in my research, so that's interesting if that's true, because I didn't find that part, because she died in 1888 at like the age of 55.
Well, this shows you earlier, like I said, I woke up, I was like, there's no notes, and then I made my own, and you had your own.
Women weren't allowed to vote until what, like 1920? I'm
telling you, I read that in there, and now, of course, I can't find it. It's in there. So maybe you continue on, and I'll find it in my list of notes.
All right, so let's meet her parents first. Like, who are the people that were a part of her upbringing to make her who she is? I say that, I shouldn't say that. Not make her who she is, but be a part of her, surroundings, because you're not always the product exactly of your parents, but you are a byproduct of your environment, I feel like. All right, so her parents...
Found it! All right, go ahead, though.
No, read it.
Okay. Again, she was a strong advocate for women's rights. She was the first woman to register to vote in Concord when women were granted the right to vote in local elections involving school matters in 1879.
Okay.
So not fully voting, but good enough for me.
Okay, yeah, I was like, wait a minute, I didn't think women were officially allowed to vote till like 18 or 1920, but all right.
She's awesome.
Her father, Amos Bronson Alcott, he was born in 1799 and he died 1888, same year that she did. Yeah. So he was a philosopher, an educator. He was a prominent transcendentalist thinker and an educator. He established progressive educational practices, and he was known for his innovative ideas about teaching, including the importance in fostering creativity and self-expression in children, which is where a lot of the stuff you can see in her writing. She was influenced by that upbringing. You can see that.
Yeah, that was good. I know it affected him because there was like a lot of jobs he would not take because he would not bend on his beliefs.
Right.
Which was strong.
Which is, I find so fascinating back then that there were those types of woke people.
Yep.
Even back in the day. So he was involved in several utopian experiments, notably the Fruitlands community in the 1840s, which was aimed to like create a model society based on these transcendentalist principles, which I have those listed, what some of those are later on down in the notes. But the experiment ultimately failed due to financial difficulties and impractical ideas, which is usually what happens back in the day when scientists didn't have funding, like Tesla and all these people that just didn't have quite the funding for things, but the people who did have the funding stole ideas.
Yeah, especially when you thought outside the box. If you went against the grain, it was tough. But
I
I
feel
mean,
like,
luckily, there was a lot of influence on it, like you said, on his daughter.
yeah,
Bronson's philosophies, his values, they greatly influenced her writings. Even reading Little Women or some of the earlier stuff, you could find that. So,
yeah, because he wasn't somebody that was about, like I feel like that patriarchal, like non-individualistic type manner. So he embraced his daughter's ability to create and empower her as an individual. All right. So
moral
her
integrity. So,
yeah.
let's talk about Abigail.
Abigail May Alcott. She was born 1800, died 1877. Supportive role for her husband and for Louisa. She was known as Marmee to her daughters as a strong, pragmatic woman who played a crucial role in her family's stability. She often took on the responsibility of managing the household and like providing her daughters and establishing a lot of stuff during their financial hardships, which I do have in the notes. I don't know if you came across this, where they did struggle financially, but at the same time, they helped the poor. Even though they were struggling, they were also helping those who are equally in poverty.
Yeah, that's what I loved about. I mean, 4 daughters, and you're sticking to your principles, but you're still helping others.
Yeah, yeah. So Abigail was actively involved in various social causes, including the abolition of slavery and women's rights. So you can see where her daughters would have got that. Her values of compassion and social responsibility were instilled in Louisa and her sisters. Which, I mean, that's like, again, that's you're a byproduct of your environment. That's going to hopefully shape your children. Which, if you read Little Women, you're going to see a lot of those values of women's rights and that strong female character. All right. Now let's talk about Louisa. Like I said before, she was born in 1832 in Germantown, Pennsylvania, and she was the second daughter. I think I was reading second
Yep.
daughter of four in the Alcott family. Her parents were transcendentalists. So transcendentalists, for those listening, these were members of a philosophical group. It was kind of like a literary movement that emerged around the mid 19th century in the New England area, particularly, but it was a movement that was rooted in the belief that individuals could transcend the physical world and reach a higher spiritual reality through intuition and personal experience rather than just relying on empirical evidence or some kind of organized religion.
Or even facts. I mean, like, I mean, not that they weren't into science and stuff like that, but it kind of reminds me of I can't Paramahansa Yogananda. It's not the same, but Transcendental Meditation.
What?
Paramahansa. I can't even talk today. Paramahansa Yogananda was a guru. Kriya Yoga. There was the Transcendental Meditation, reaching those higher realms. So this was pretty cool thinking for back in that time. And there was a lot of other authors, I believe. It was kind of...
Well, we say that because it was early, colonial times, but honestly, a lot of that stuff was already kind of implemented into like the Hindu and a lot of the Buddhist, a lot of the different movements that were already happening across, the globe.
Absolutely. I'm thinking about America, coming to America and trying to stay Christianity or Catholicism.
Right. Yeah, I feel like it was kind of like a new thing for Western culture. Yeah, I would agree
precisely
with that.
But I mean, it kind of shocked me as we're reading these, and we have the same notes here, like Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, Margaret Fuller. A lot of these authors, these people had these same beliefs, so I'm pretty sure like they hung out together. They were really close.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this. I think it was Thoreau or Emerson, one of them we talked about when we talked about some of the authors and how a lot of the books they wrote had to deal with nature and, just the different things that were kind of, from the Transcendentalist movement were inspired how they saw the world around them. You saw a lot of that throughout their writing. All right. back to Louisa's family. They often struggled, like I said, financially, and they would they were encouraged to be resourceful. She and her sisters would put on plays. I can remember as a kid, making tents, doing things and you're improving. This is something that you don't always have to buy a Lego set. You don't always have to buy a toy. And often when you see things where people get these big toys for their kids, the kids like the box more than the toy.
Yep.
But it's kind of like you don't need those things to have a rich life. You know what I mean? So this is proof here because she would write plays. She and her sisters would put these plays on, write stories, engage in imaginative games to entertain themselves, which I'm sure was a huge thing back in the colonial days, rich or poor. So, one of the things I put here was her family and friends not only were prominent thinkers at the time, like we had mentioned, like with the Emerson and Thoreau and Nathan Hawthorne, but I think Hawthorne might have been the one we talked about in that episode. Anyways, but she grew up with her sisters who ended up being in Little Women. These sisters were her characters.
Yeah, it was loosely based on her life.
Yeah, she grew up with Anna, which was Meg, Elizabeth, Beth, and then May, who was Amy, which is kind of cool because she took May and just rearranged the words and made it Amy. Those close-knit relationships, like these distinct personalities, are all found in the characters of Little Women, but their playful rituals, their deep friendships, and everyday struggles they shared mirrored these sisters in this book. It was kind of like a fictional true life story, like based on real events. That's how we would see it in the movie today. Did you have anything in your notes about the sisters that you wanted to add?
I had to go back, but because talking about how she portrayed the main character, and even thinking about even before that, she had a pen name, before Little Women, and we'll touch on it here in a minute. But she financially supported her family. I mean, that book was huge, and I'm thinking back to that time because we've talked about this. Like, print, it ain't like today. You can spit it out and print it out. That was some serious stuff to print a book, and the fact that she was like the main breadwinner in her family for a long time. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's talk about her literary beginnings. Let's talk about how that kind of came to pass. So
she was Jo March. The name eluded me, and now it came back to me.
What?
In the book, in Little Women.
Oh.
Yep.
I was like, what?
Yep. Well, come on, squirrels.
Got it. Wrangle that squirrel in. All right. So from a young age, she was encouraged to write, I would assume by her parents, being into being creative and looking at the world and expression and stuff like that.
Well, and just the family and the community being in touch with the authors that were around her. So.
Well, and she didn't have the life distractions like Netflix or social media. So these things were these were time passers. And you got to think, a lot of times the sun goes down, the only thing you have is the light, a small low lit areas, so you're not gonna get a lot of work done in the dark. I mean, obviously they had like the electricity type stuff happening, but which I don't know. That's the one thing I probably should have researched because not everybody had full electrical use back then. Financially, that wasn't a thing. Some people had to still kind of go by the candlelight. They may have had like smaller.
Yeah, because I even wonder back then, if they were still so into storytelling. And she's written so much. How many of her childhood stories she made up actually turned into short stories that she's written? Surely quite a few.
Yeah. I mean, she went on to write after Little Women, obviously.
Oh, yeah, tons of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, even she would create magazines by hand when she was younger, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I read something. I can't remember if I put it in the notes or it was something I was just kind of like reading more. I just kept reading stuff on her. And I would just kind of, if I'd read something really cool, I'd kind of put it in the notes or whatever. And at the end of this episode, I'll actually have some of the links that I used where I went and researched some of this stuff out. If anybody wants to read more about it, because obviously we don't have as much time to put everything about this woman's life in there, but we can get the gist. Okay, where was I at? Oh, life experiences. Okay, so you had some cool things that kind of overlapped into my stuff. As her family faced challenges, she took various jobs to help support them. She worked as a governess and a domestic worker, experiences that would, again, later come into her writing, particularly her portrayal of women's roles in society.
She was a Civil War nurse. That was one of her jobs. There was even speculation. I wonder if that kind of led to her death along the lines, because she had gotten, like, her decline in health. She
Well,
contracted typhoid fever.
I also read that she had mercury poisoning too.
Yes, well, that was from the treatments,
Yeah.
because she received them. She got typhoid when she was a Civil War nurse, and they kind of wonder if it affected her down the line for that chronic illness. Because she was only 55 when she died.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
all right.
Okay. We talked about some of her early work. We said she was writing. Oh my gosh, I cannot talk. Early work included poverty and short stories. We're talking about her writing here, some of her earlier work. But by the age of 15, she was determined to become a published author. She wrote stories and submitted them to local publications, often receiving rejections, but continuing her pursuit and passion. And this kind of foreshadows her future success, because it echoes this character of Jo March, like you'd mentioned in Little Women, which embodies that same drive and spirit. She published her first story in a magazine at the age of 19. I don't know, which today, it's so easy. You see young writers, Kathleen Horsley's daughter, she wrote a little book, but it's a lot easier to access the avenues to get published today, or just self-publish. Whereas back then, to be able to print something, you couldn't just go on and load your thing to Kindle. It wasn't that easy. She had to be accepted by someone who would print for her, but she had the support of her family. All right. To talk about this story that kind of really put her on the map, essentially, that most people know her by as Little Women.
And that's when she came out as herself, because she did have a pen name earlier.
Yeah, she did have a pen name, and you have that wrote down?
A.M. Barnard, I believe. Let me look at my notes.
It's yes. A.M. Barnard.
Yep, yeah. I'm a Barnard.
A.M. Barnard. Which I wonder if she did that kind of like J.K. Rowling. She used J.K. Rowling so it sounded more masculine and not as a feminine artist, because at the time, female authors weren't like as big as some of the male authors.
Yeah, I wondered the same thing. I mean, was she rejected so many times? She's like, I'm just going to switch to a pen name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and make it sound more manly, or more masculine, I should say, not manly. All right, so this story follows the lives of the four March sisters, which is Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy, growing up in Massachusetts during the Civil War era. The novel explores the struggles and financial difficulties, personal ambitions, and societal expectations as they navigate the transition from childhood to adulthood. Each sister has a distinct trait. Meg seeks the stability and family. Jo is an independent, aspiring writer. Beth is gentle and selfless, and Amy is artistic and she is
aspirational.
Thank you. The story emphasizes the theme of family, sisterhood, gender roles, and personal growth, showing their journeys and their importance of love, sacrifice, and resilience. Little Women remains as a timeless classic that with rich character development and insightful exploration of women's lives. All right. The publication of Little Women. First published in 2 volumes. The first volume in 1868 was and the second one was in 1869. The novel is a semi-autobiographical, which we kind of mentioned before, like, as where it's loosely based on her life, and her experiences with her sisters and her family. The impact, the book was an immediate success and has remained a beloved classic because Alcott's portrayal of strong, independent female characters and the themes of domestic life and family love and personal ambition resonate with the reader. So I can completely imagine how the women who felt like they didn't want to be, I mean, if you want to be a stay-at-home mom that cooks and cleans and da-da-da-da-da, that is who you want to be. You know what I mean? But if you didn't want to be that person, but you were required by society's rules to be in that, this was probably like reading smut back then.
Well, I'm even sure at the time women loved it because it made them feel strong and independent, because in her real life, she never married. And I forget how it was worded, but she said she'd rather be, a lonely old spinster than tied down.
Well, she didn't get married, so she didn't have kids, but she did adopt. I think I put that down there later, that she did adopt when her sister died. Yeah, she adopted her niece, and then afterwards moved to Boston, Massachusetts, and continued publishing her work with from after Little Women. So, yeah. But I mean, you know what? You have to think too. Maybe it wasn't that she didn't want to get married. And I mean, she's obviously not here that we can ask her. Maybe she didn't want, or not her. That was the time frame when you were kind of like almost like you put your daughter out there, and men didn't want the stigma of being with such a strong-willed woman. You know what I mean? Women were supposed to be submissive and quiet, and she wasn't. She was a little bit more vocal on her independence.
Yeah, you know what? I remember in history class back in the 80s that, and it was true. It's a sad time because my history teacher said, earlier on, women were expected to be barefoot and pregnant, and such a horrible negative way to think. But okay, I want to marry your daughter. Okay, I need someone to cook, clean, have children,
and
stay quiet.
Have a male child for me.
Yes, exactly. So, and I think she was so. I mean, look how much she wrote. So I think that was a big part of it too. She already had a lover. It was writing. So
Yeah. Okay. Friendships. Alcott's interactions with other children in Concord and her friendships influenced her writing. This camaraderie and this competition she experienced with her sisters, as well as friendship with other children, notable figures in the community, offer her these rich material for her stories. So often writers will do that. I know in my first book, obviously the character line is a total fiction story, but the characters I used, their names started or were similar to people that I knew, so I could keep track of who their personalities were and made it easier for me. When you're
I do the
writing,
same.
yeah, when you're writing these things and you're kind of creating a character around someone you tend to kind of manifest their personality into that character, so it's easy to remember, like, oh yeah, I made them like Jack. So I have to make sure that this person is a pompous jerk face, or I made him like this person. Oh, I got to make sure they're very sweet. And okay, have you heard the new word is demure? That keeps coming across all social media.
No.
Oh my gosh. Kids are like cringing because everybody keeps saying it. So I'm like, I keep seeing this on my social media, like people using the word demure. I'm like, why are we using this word now? Like, why are we resurrecting this word as a new trend word? Because then people are going to get tired of it and no one's want to say it. But anyways, yes.
Oh, I've been seeing these videos of the young kids like using skibbity or Ohio, like it's so boring. So like back in the day we had.
Ohio.
Yes, I'm like, but I mean, we did the same. Everyone's like, why are they
all
talking that way?
roads lead to Ohio. All roads lead back to Ohio. I always meet someone that knows someone from Ohio, but I don't meet people that know people from Montana.
This is true.
So, all right. Let's go later in her life and legacy. Let's continue there. Do you want to go into some of these notes that I put out there?
Yeah, so she, following the success of Little Women, she wrote a bunch of stuff. She wrote several other novels and stories, including Little Men and Joe's Boys, which continued the stories of the March sisters and expanded on themes from Little Women. So, she was successful for quite a while. Like I said, she wrote over 30 novels and short stories, and I'm sure much more than that, tinier things from magazines. She was very into social activism. Can't even talk. Activism. Strong advocate for women's rights. Q abolition. Can't even talk. Yeah.
Where did that Q come from?
I don't know. Probably me, because I just hit it. Yeah. Abolition of slavery.
Literally, I saw that abolition was spelled A with a Q.
Abolition. I was going to say that. I'm reading her notes, everybody. So, yes. So that threw me off. Abolition and slavery and social reform. She was involved in various causes and often used her writing to address social issues. Yes, she was a social worker. She was one of the originals. I think that's why my wife loves her so much.
Probably. I didn't even think about that connection.
Yeah, and I think we talked about her health struggles earlier. And I'm sure, again, like I said earlier, she was a war nurse in the Civil War. And when she suffered, they had mercury treatments. And she ended up suffering, they think, from a stroke in 1888, but they're pretty sure that her health continued to decline because of that mercury poisoning. So we've done some weird things in medicine for hundreds of years, leeching and doing this and that, bloodletting, and using mercury to treat this and that. So of course, there was a lot of people that died unnecessarily. She never married, like we said, never had any children, except you said she did adopt her niece, and right there. And afterwards she moved to Boston, Massachusetts, and continued publishing more works and followed the characters from Little Women. Of course she did. That was like huge.
Yeah, so that would be a time when technically like book series wasn't really a thing. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like a big, like this is book 2. Like they had volumes, of course, of different whatevers, but having book series, like, because it was like unheard of really to be published author, let alone have series.
I know. So think of how innovative she was. She had the intelligence to think, what? This book is huge. I need to continue this story. We started this series, and I get excited because, just imagine if we could sit down with these authors. I mean, the people who started this. I mean, I know there have been authors for thousands of years, but in this printed form, in early America or even Europe, it would just be so wonderful to pick their minds.
Yeah. Well, by Google, I haven't. This is not pure research. I will research this more, but by just a quick research or by a quick prompt to Google, it says the world's first novel is thought to be The Tale of the Genji, which was written by 11th century Japanese woman. That's cool.
So writing and an author started from women.
Yeah.
There we go. You heard it from Google.
So we'll have to cover this person. But I mean, if you want to look at, this could be debatable because some people would say the first fiction would be anything that was religious based. It's kind of like, that's a different type of fiction. I feel like that's borderline fiction, nonfiction, when people could literally say the Epic of Gilgamesh was the first.
Yep.
Or some of the writings from the Hindu, because some the writings from the Hindu, they actually have some stuff that's translated because there's no comparable language to it to be able to translate what it says, and it's even older than the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Or the writings on cave walls. You never know.
Well, yeah, I mean, so yes, but do we know that those were fiction, or if those were just tales told of their day? And we saw this oxen, and we used our arrows. All those might be stories. We don't know that those are fictional stories.
Somewhere back in that time, there had to be a habitual liar. And so he was like, man, I went out and killed 3 dinosaurs. Well, I know we didn't exist when dinosaurs. I killed 3 beefalo. And, and this, yeah, I like making up words. Add that to the list. Beefalo.
Well, so fun fact, did you know that Louisa May Alcott and her sisters actually made up words? Yeah, I did read that.
I do now.
I'm glad you said that because I forgot that part that I read. Yeah, they would make up words to kind of like separate themselves from their struggles. They would make up new words and create new things. That's cool.
Maybe that's why I do it.
Yeah.
But mine's accidental.
Well, we have words. Do you remember all our words?
No, I know you got the board.
Yeah, so we got Kroll. We got Relegant, and we've got outro, but not in the sense of like a normal use of outro in songwriting.
I have to. I made up one when I was with Brian, my partner from My Prevail. We laughed about it for days. I had to remember what it was. So, but I think I was tired when it spit out of my mouth. So, anyways, she had passed away in March 6th of 1888. Only 55. I hate that,
She accomplished quite a bit. Well, her first book wasn't until 1868. It took her a while to really, really push that forward. Okay. Well, I hope Diane loved this episode.
Yeah, I'm glad we didn't read off like a book list, because then Diane would be like, oh, I need flower fables, moods, hospital sketches. Let me see what else we got here behind the mask. Do what?
As you're reading them off?
Yeah, but I'm not going to go through the whole entire list, because then she'll go to Amazon. Because I went out there looking for it, and she has this book series. It's like, who is George Washington? Who is Albert Einstein? These cute little books almost for kids.
Ones?
Yes.
My girls had those.
Listen, I thought she had maybe 15 or 20. She does this thing where she's an Amazon addict. And I went out there, and I guarantee you there are well over 100. I'm like, where did these come from? So I got a little. You should see her library. I need to take a picture of it. She'd kill me though because it's real sloppy right now. She's still loading. But I got these really nice bookshelves all on one wall, and I got a tiny little section for some of my books. I think I'm going to have to remove them to give her a little more room, and then I'm probably going to have to get more library bookshelves to wrap around the corner. So it's crazy.
I think you should, because if you're an author, publisher, and your wife doesn't have an in-house library, something's wrong.
Yeah, but it's like she's rooting me out with my Vendera Publishing books.
Maybe you should have your own man cave, and she says this is my space.
Yeah, I do. Kind of downstairs, but she's kind of taking that over with all her clothes, too. So, I'm not supposed to say that.
She's listening.
She is. She knows. Truth is the truth. Books and clothes. Books and clothes.
Books and books and... we have a thing where it's like boots and pants and boots and pants and boots and pants. Okay. All right. Well, so this has been cool. We're going to add a few more authors down the line to this Echoes of Authors from the Past. If you have an author that you would like for us to cover, please reach out to us at alwayswritepodcast@gmail.com. Or if you would like to find other episodes that we have done, you can go to alwayswritepodcast.com and click the little icons. You can go to Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, and Amazon Music. You can watch us on any of those platforms. And if you have other questions that haven't pertained to this episode, also email us too, because we're willing to reach out. We do have some cool episodes coming up after this one. We're going to have a new author on who's not been published yet. She just finished her manuscript, and she's going to kind of give us her excitement. We've kind of hinted at her a few times. So now she's at the point where she's submitted her manuscript to the publisher, and we're going to talk to her in a few weeks. And we have a best-selling author coming on soon. I shall not say the name yet, but
we will say that she's coming on. I'm very excited about it and the topic because they reached out to us because they say, hey, if you want to.
Yep. That was exciting. Yes,
exactly.
Yeah, and also something I haven't told Jamie, that the PR group that reached out to us because they represent a ton of authors is also going to come on.
Oh, that is amazing.
So we're going to have a lot of people coming on, kind of giving us a kind of an insight to things that we don't know, that we may not have experienced, and give us all this good stuff for you that are listening, all of those writers out there that are aspiring to get into this world, or those who are in the world and I just need to get some more inspiration, or you just like us.
Yep.
Or you're just like, oh, I'm so glad they're crazy and I'm not. All right. As always, thank you for listening. I'm author Carissa DeLay.
And I'm author Jamie Vendera. And we'll see you in the next episode.
Always right.